My name is Diamond Harrington, 67 years old, and I never thought my own flesh and blood would betray me like this. The house I built with these calloused hands 30 years ago, the home where I raised my son Trevor after his mother died, was suddenly no longer mine. When Trevor looked me straight in the eye and said those words, I felt my world crumbling. Yet as I packed my bags and walked away from everything I had built, I smiled. Why? Because I already knew what would happen next. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are from, hit that like button, and subscribe to follow what happened when I decided to stand up for myself. I grew up in a small blue-collar town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My father was a steelworker who taught me the value of hard work and how to build things that last. By 16, I was already helping construct houses during summer breaks, learning every aspect of the trade from foundation to roofing. My friends were chasing girls and playing sports, but I was learning how to create something permanent in this world. When I was 24, I met Margaret at a local diner where she worked as a waitress. She had this laugh that could light up the whole room, and these bright blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. She was going to community college at night, studying to be a nurse. Our first date was me helping her study anatomy terms, and our second was her watching me frame a garden shed. We just fit together like two pieces of well-crafted furniture. We got married after just 8 months. Some said it was too fast, but when you know, you know. Margaret finished her nursing degree while I established my construction business. We lived in a small apartment, saving every penny we could. We had dreams of building our own place someday, on a piece of land her grandparents had left her on the outskirts of town. 2 acres with tall oak trees and a small creek running through the back. Perfect. For 7 years, we tried to have a child without success. Doctor's appointments, treatments, disappointments. Then, when we had almost given up hope, Margaret got pregnant with Trevor. It was a difficult pregnancy. She was put on bed rest for the last 3 months, and I would come home from work sites covered in sawdust to massage her swollen feet and read to our unborn child. Trevor was born on a stormy April morning. 7 pounds 6 ounces of miracle. Margaret had complications during delivery, but she pulled through. I remember holding my son for the first time, his tiny hand gripping my rough finger, and thinking there was nothing I would not do for this child. When Trevor was 3, we finally had enough savings to start building our dream house on Margaret's family land. I designed it myself. A 2-story craftsman-style home with large windows to let in natural light, a wraparound porch, and solid oak throughout. Every nail, every board, every shingle was placed with love and precision. I would work my regular construction jobs during the day, then spend evenings and weekends on our house. Margaret would bring Trevor to the site, and he would play with his toy trucks in the dirt while we worked. It took me 2 years to complete that house, building it section by section as we could afford materials. I remember the day we finally moved in. Trevor was 5 by then, and ran from room to room, claiming different spaces as his own. Margaret cried when she saw the custom kitchen I had built with the island she had always wanted. That night, we sat on our new porch, drinking coffee and watching the stars, feeling like we had created our own little piece of heaven. But happiness is fragile. 3 years after we moved into our dream home, Margaret started getting headaches. Terrible, debilitating headaches that her doctor initially dismissed as migraines or stress. By the time they finally did the right tests, the brain tumor was already advanced. Stage 4. Glioblastoma, terminal. She fought hard for 2 years, but cancer is a merciless enemy. Trevor was just 10 years old when he lost his mother. I was 39 when I lost my soulmate. The night after the funeral, I sat alone on that porch we had built together and made a promise to the stars that I would make sure our son had everything he needed, that I would keep Margaret alive through the house we had created and the boy we had raised. Raising Trevor alone while running my construction business was the hardest job I ever tackled. I would wake up at 5 in the morning to make his breakfast and pack his lunch before taking him to school. Then I would work 10-hour days at various construction sites before picking him up, helping with homework, making dinner, and trying to be both mother and father to a grieving child. There were rough patches. Trevor went through a phase at 13 where he was angry at the world, at me, at everything. He would slam doors and yell that I would never understand him like his mom had. And he was right. Margaret had a gentleness I could never replicate with my rough hands and direct manner. But we found our way. I coached his little league baseball team. I taught him how to change oil in a car and how to fix a leaky faucet. I helped him with math homework and sat awkwardly through parent-teacher conferences. To pay for Trevor to go to college, I took on extra jobs. Weekends, holidays, it did not matter. I even sold some family heirlooms Margaret had left behind, including her grandmother's antique silver tea set that had been in her family for generations. Nothing was too precious if it meant Trevor could have opportunities I never had. He was smart, my boy. Got accepted to a good university to study finance. I was so proud on his graduation day, standing there in my only suit that was a bit too tight around the middle, watching him accept his diploma. Margaret would have been bursting with joy. That night, I gave Trevor his mother's wedding ring that I had been saving for him. Told him to give it to someone special someday. After college, Trevor moved to the city, about an hour away. He would come home for holidays and occasional weekends. Our relationship changed, evolved. He seemed to look at me differently, sometimes with impatience when I would talk about construction or local town gossip. I could feel him pulling away, but I told myself it was natural. Birds leave the nest. That is how it should be. I retired at 64 after a fall from a ladder left me with a bad back. The construction company I had built was small but respected, and I sold it to my foreman who had been with me for 20 years. I settled into a quiet retirement in the house that contained so many memories. I would garden, fish in the creek, and have the guys over for poker nights. It was a good life, simple but mine. Then Trevor met Alicia 3 years ago. She was beautiful, educated, and came from what Trevor called a good family. The first time he brought her to the house, I noticed how her eyes darted around, taking in the dated kitchen, the worn furniture, the family photos on wood-paneled walls. She was polite but distant. When Trevor showed her around, I overheard her whisper, "What was he thinking with this wallpaper?" Their wedding was an elaborate affair at a country club in the city. I felt out of place among Alicia's family with their perfect teeth and casual mentions of vacation homes. I wore a new suit that Trevor had insisted on buying me, but it felt like a costume. I spent $20,000 of my retirement savings on their wedding, money I had been putting away for a rainy day. But what better reason to spend it than my only son's happiness? The first year of their marriage, I saw Trevor less and less. When they did visit, Alicia would make subtle comments about the house needing updates or how charming it was that I still used the same dishes Margaret and I had received as wedding gifts. I tried to warm to her, made her Margaret's special apple pie recipe, showed her the garden, but there was always a barrier I could not break through. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The way Trevor would step away to take phone calls. The growing embarrassment when I would tell stories about my construction days. The suggestions that maybe I should consider selling the house and moving into one of those nice retirement communities. But a father sees what he wants to see, and I wanted to see my son happy. The beginning of the end started 6 months ago, when Trevor called on a Tuesday evening. His voice had that false cheerfulness that immediately put me on alert. "Dad, Alicia and I are having some issues with our apartment lease, and we were wondering if we could stay with you for a little while. Just until we figure things out." "Of course," I said. "This house has always been your home, too." They arrived that weekend with 6 suitcases and a moving truck full of furniture, much more than a temporary stay would suggest. I helped them unload, clearing out the spare bedroom and part of the garage for their things. Alicia mentioned they had put most of their stuff in storage, but this was the essential stuff they could not live without. Essential stuff included a 65-inch television, a fancy espresso machine, and enough clothes to fill 2 closets. At first, it was nice having company in the house again. I would cook breakfast for everyone, and we would have dinner together most nights. Trevor commuted to his job in the city, and Alicia worked remotely as some kind of digital marketing consultant. I never quite understood what she did, despite her explaining it multiple times with increasing impatience. About 3 weeks into their stay, I came home from fishing to find my living room completely rearranged. The comfortable old recliner Margaret had given me for my 40th birthday was gone, replaced by a sleek white sofa that looked like it would show every speck of dirt. The family photos had been taken down, replaced by abstract art pieces that meant nothing to me. "Where is my chair?" I asked Alicia, who was directing 2 delivery men carrying in a glass coffee table. "Oh, we moved it to the garage," she said without looking up from her phone. "This furniture is much more current. The other stuff was really bringing down the energy of the space. Trevor and I thought it would be nice to surprise you with an update." "Did Trevor approve moving my chair?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Of course," she said. "He agrees this place needs to be brought into this century." That night, I asked Trevor about the changes. We were in the garage, where I was trying to find a place to put my chair among all their stored belongings. "I thought you might want to check with me before changing the house," I said carefully. Trevor sighed, the way he did when explaining something to a child. "Dad, we are just trying to help modernize the place a bit. You cannot keep living in the past. Mom has been gone for 25 years. The past is what built this house," I reminded him. "These walls hold memories. Well, now they hold better furniture," he joked, slapping me on the back. "Just give it a chance. Alicia has a great eye for design." I let it go, but that night I took one of the family photos they had removed and put it on my nightstand. A small act of resistance. Over the next few months, more and more changes happened. The kitchen cabinets I had built by hand were painted white without my permission. The hardwood floors I had installed were covered with area rugs. Even my bedroom was not safe, as one day I came home to find I had been moved to the smallest bedroom and they had taken over the master. "Trevor said you would not mind," Alicia explained when I questioned the move. "The master has the ensuite bathroom, and I need the space for my morning routine. You are just one person, after all." I swallowed my protest. It was true, I was just one person. And this was still Trevor's home too, in a way. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that soon they would find their own place again. But as weeks turned into months, there was no talk of leaving. Instead, there were more deliveries, more changes. The garden I had tended for years was torn up to make room for a hot tub. The shed where I kept my tools was cleaned out to store their exercise equipment. Slowly but surely, I was being erased from my own home. I began spending more time away. I would go fishing even when the fish were not biting. I would visit my friend Frank's auto shop and hang around, helping with small tasks just to have somewhere to be. My poker nights with the guys were moved to Frank's garage, because Alicia said the cigar smoke would damage their new curtains. One evening, I overheard Trevor and Alicia talking in the kitchen. I had come in the back door after a day of fishing and paused when I heard my name. "Your dad is becoming a problem," Alicia was saying. "He is always underfoot, looking sad about every little change we make. I cannot live like this much longer." "I know, babe," Trevor replied. "But what are we supposed to do? It is his house." Alicia's laugh was cold. "Is it? The mortgage was paid off years ago, and he has never updated the will or deed since your mom died. Technically, half of it should be yours already." My parents agree. My blood ran cold. They had been discussing my house, my will, with her parents. And what did she mean about the deed? "We just need to find a way to make him see that it makes more sense for him to move somewhere smaller," Trevor said. "He is getting older. This place is too big for him to maintain anyway. If he will not listen to reason, we might need to take more direct action," Alicia replied. "My parents are ready to help." I backed away quietly and went out to sit in my truck for an hour, trying to process what I had heard. My own son was plotting to push me out of my home, the home I had built board by board for our family. The betrayal cut deep, but a small voice in my head whispered that maybe they were right. Maybe I was being selfish, holding on to a house too big for one old man. That weekend, I tried to talk to Trevor alone, man to man. We were in the garage, where I was sorting through some of my belongings that had been boxed up to make room for their things. "Son, I need to know what the long-term plan is here," I said. "Are you and Alicia looking for your own place?" Trevor busied himself organizing a shelf, not meeting my eyes. "Actually, Dad, we have been thinking this arrangement is working out pretty well. The commute is not too bad for me, and Alicia likes the space." "So you are planning to stay permanently?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Would that be so bad?" he asked, finally looking at me. "This house is too big for just you, and someday it will be mine anyway." The casual way he said it, like my death was just a formality to be waited out, stunned me into silence. "I know it is hard to talk about," Trevor continued, mistaking my silence for agreement, "but you are not getting any younger. Alicia and I think it might be best if you considered moving into a retirement community. There is a nice one about 20 minutes from here. We could help with the costs." "This is my home," I said quietly. "I built it with my own hands." Trevor sighed. "I know, Dad, and we appreciate that. But times change. People change. This house could be put to better use with a young family in it." "You and Alicia planning on children?" I asked, a flicker of hope that my son was thinking about the future, about family. "Well, not right away," he admitted. "But her parents are looking to downsize too. They might move in with us for a while." "And where would I be during all this?" I asked. "Like I said, there are some really nice retirement communities," he repeated, as if I had not heard him the first time. I changed the subject then, asking about his work, but the conversation haunted me. That night, I dug out the deed to the house from my filing cabinet and looked at it closely. It was still in my name only. I had always assumed Trevor would inherit everything when I passed, but I had never formally added him to any documentation. A strange feeling of relief washed over me, followed immediately by guilt. Should not a father want to give his son everything? The next few weeks were tense. I could feel Trevor and Alicia watching me, waiting for me to bring up the retirement community again. Instead, I kept my head down and tried to maintain what little space I had left in the house. I started locking my bedroom door when I left, after finding Alicia had reorganized my dresser drawers without asking. I kept important papers in a lockbox under my bed. One day, I came home early from fishing to find Trevor going through my filing cabinet. He jumped when I entered the room, looking guilty. "What are you doing in my papers?" I asked. "Just looking for the insurance information," he said quickly. "Alicia was wondering about the house coverage. I could have told you where that was if you had asked," I said, my suspicion growing. "Did not want to bother you," he said with a forced smile. "Find anything good while fishing?" The subject was changed, but my trust was further eroded. That night, I called my old friend Franklin, who had retired from his law practice a few years back. I asked him some hypothetical questions about house ownership and family rights. His answers confirmed what I already knew. The house was legally mine alone. But he also warned me that family disputes over property could get ugly fast. I did not want ugly. I wanted my son back, the boy I had raised, who had once looked at me with admiration instead of impatience. I wanted peace in the home I had built, but peace seemed increasingly out of reach. The confrontation that changed everything happened on a Sunday. Alicia had invited her parents over for dinner, which had become a regular occurrence. They were a couple in their early 60s, always impeccably dressed and quick to offer opinions on everything from politics to the way I organized my tool drawer. Gerald was a retired bank manager who spoke constantly about his golf game, and Patricia was a former real estate agent who could not enter a room without commenting on its potential value after renovations. I had grown to dread these dinners, where I felt like a guest in my own home, but I endured them for Trevor's sake. This particular Sunday, I had spent the morning fishing and brought home a few nice trout that I offered to prepare. Alicia declined, saying she had already planned a roast that would better pair with the wine her father was bringing. So I sat at my own dinner table, picking at overcooked meat and listening to Gerald talk about his latest cruise. when Trevor cleared his throat and set down his fork. "Dad, we have something to discuss with you," he said, glancing at Alicia for support. She reached over and took his hand, giving him an encouraging nod. "Alicia's parents are selling their house," Trevor continued. "The market is really good right now, and they want to downsize." "That is nice," I said cautiously, not sure where this was heading. Gerald jumped in. "We have been talking with Trevor and Alicia about the future, and we all agree it makes the most sense for us to move in here." I looked at each of their faces, waiting for someone to explain how this would work in a 3-bedroom house that already felt crowded with the 3 of us. "It would be tight with all of us," I said when no one spoke. "Maybe it would be better if they found a small place nearby." "Actually," Trevor said, his voice taking on a rehearsed quality, "we think it would be best if you were the one to find another place." The table fell silent. I put down my fork carefully, making sure it did not clatter against the plate. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "Trevor would not meet my eyes now. My wife's family will live here now. This house is too big for you anyway, and you are always complaining about the stairs. A retirement community would be much more suitable at your age." I looked at my son, this stranger wearing Trevor's face. "Are you asking me to leave my own home?" "Not asking, Dad," Trevor said, his voice hardening, telling. "Alicia's parents are moving in next month. They have already sold their house. Arrangements need to be made." "What arrangements? Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. Trevor looked at me then, and I saw something cold and unfamiliar in his eyes. "Go to hell for all I care," he snapped. "You have had this house to yourself for decades. It is our turn now." Alicia put a restraining hand on his arm, but she was smirking slightly. Patricia looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Gerald studied his wineglass, as if it contained ancient secrets. "I see," I said, folding my napkin and placing it beside my plate. "I understand completely." "You do?" Trevor looked surprised, perhaps expecting more resistance. "Yes," I said, rising from the table. "If that is how you feel, I will leave tomorrow." "Dad, wait," Trevor said, suddenly backpedaling. "We do not mean right this second. We can help you find a place, get you settled." "No need," I said. "I can manage on my own. Always have." I walked out of the dining room with as much dignity as I could muster. Behind me, I heard Alicia whisper something, followed by Trevor's uncomfortable laugh. I went to my bedroom, the small one that used to be a guest room, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. My own son, my boy, the child I had raised alone, sacrificed for, loved with every fiber of my being. "Go to hell," he had said, as if I were nothing, as if the life I had built for us meant nothing. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I packed a suitcase with clothes and necessities. I gathered important documents and the few family photos I had managed to keep out of storage. I found the small box containing Margaret's personal items that I had saved for Trevor, her journals, her favorite books, the pressed flower from our first date. I left it on the bed. Let him decide if those memories were worth keeping, or if they too should be discarded like his father. By dawn, I had loaded my truck with what I could carry. I took one last walk through the house while everyone was still sleeping. I touched the kitchen counters I had installed, ran my hand along the banister I had carved, looked out the bay window I had built so Margaret could watch the birds while she recovered from chemo. So many memories in these walls. So much love. I wrote a brief note and left it on the kitchen table. "Trevor, I built this house for our family. I thought you understood what that meant. I hope someday you will." "Dad," as I pulled out of the driveway in the early morning light, I looked back at the house one last time, and despite the pain tearing me apart inside, I smiled, because I knew something Trevor did not. I knew that sometimes you have to lose everything to remember what matters most. And I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I drove without a clear destination until I found myself at Frank's Auto Repair. Frank had been my friend for over 40 years, since we worked construction jobs together in our 20s before he switched to automotive work. His shop was not open yet, but I knew he arrived early to get paperwork done before customers started showing up. Sure enough, his beat-up Ford was already in the lot. I parked beside it and sat there for a moment, gathering my courage. It is not easy for a man my age to admit he has nowhere to go. The side door opened, and Frank appeared, coffee mug in hand, eyebrows rising in surprise when he saw my truck loaded with belongings. "Diamond, what the hell are you doing here at 6:30 in the morning? And what is all that?" He gestured to my packed truck. I got out slowly, my back stiff from the sleepless night. "Need some coffee, Frank, and maybe some advice." His garage office was cluttered but comfortable, with decades of automotive memorabilia covering the walls and the smell of oil and coffee permeating everything. I sat heavily in the chair across from his desk and told him everything. The gradual takeover of my house, the overheard conversations, and finally, the confrontation. Frank's face grew darker with each detail. By the time I finished, he was practically vibrating with anger. "That ungrateful little," he started, then caught himself. "Sorry, Diamond. I know he is your son." "Still my son," I agreed quietly. "Just not the son I thought I raised." Frank shook his head. "So where are you planning to go?" I shrugged. "Not sure yet. Maybe find a small apartment somewhere. I have some savings." "Bullshit," Frank declared, standing up. "You are staying with me until we figure this out. Got a spare room since the kids moved out. Linda will be thrilled to have someone who appreciates her cooking." I started to protest, but Frank waved me off. "Not taking no for an answer, Diamond. What kind of friend would I be if I let you wander off like some homeless person? We will unload your truck after I make some calls." "What calls?" I asked. Frank grinned, but there was steel in his eyes, calling in the cavalry. "Trevor might think he can push his old man around, but he is about to learn that is not how things work in this town." True to his word, Frank made calls. By lunchtime, my truck was unloaded into his spare bedroom, and his dining table was occupied by 4 of my oldest friends. Besides Frank, there was Bill Norris, who had been my foreman for 15 years before buying my company when I retired. Ron Martinez, who had worked alongside me on countless projects and now ran the local hardware store. And most surprisingly, Sandra Henderson, a retired attorney who went to Frank's church and who had drafted wills for half the people in town. "So let me get this straight," Sandra said after hearing my story. "Your son and his wife moved into your house, gradually took it over, and now have told you to leave so her parents can move in? And the house is still solely in your name?" "That is about the size of it," I confirmed. Sandra tapped her pen against her legal pad. "And you built this house yourself? Have documentation to prove it?" "Built every inch of it," I said. "Got all the permits, receipts for materials, everything. I keep good records." Sandra smiled. "Mr. Harrington, I think you are in a much stronger position than you realize. Legally speaking, your son does not have a leg to stand on." I shifted uncomfortably. "I do not want to sue my own son," I said. "Nobody is talking lawsuits yet," Sandra assured me. "But you need to understand your rights before you decide what to do next. Knowledge is power." Bill leaned forward, arms crossed on the table. "Diamond, I watched you build that house while working for you. I remember how you would put in a full day at paying jobs, then go work on your own place until midnight. No way I am standing by while some ungrateful kid takes that from you." Ron nodded in agreement. "My dad lost his house to my brother's schemes. I always regretted not doing more to stop it. Not going to let that happen to you." Their support warmed me, but I still felt torn. "He is my son," I reminded them. "My only child." Frank put a hand on my shoulder. "Which is exactly why you cannot let him do this. What kind of lesson are you teaching him if you just walk away? Sometimes being a good parent means standing your ground." Over the next few days, a plan began to take shape. Sandra reviewed my deed and confirmed that legally, the house was mine alone. She also helped me understand that in our state, even if I had added Trevor to the deed after Margaret died, I would still own half the property and could not be forced out without my consent. Bill and some of the guys from the construction company offered to help with whatever needed doing, from moving furniture to standing beside me when I returned to the house. Frank insisted I stay with him and his wife Linda as long as necessary, refusing any offers of payment. But the most unexpected ally came in the form of a phone call 3 days after I left the house. I was helping Frank in the shop, keeping my hands busy to quiet my mind, when his office phone rang. "Someone asking for you, Diamond," Frank said, covering the receiver. "Says his name is Gerald Wilson." "Isn't that Alicia's father?" I confirmed, wiping my hands on a rag and taking the phone with trepidation. "Hello? Mr. Harrington." Gerald's voice came through, sounding uncomfortable. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "What can I do for you, Gerald?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "I wanted to apologize for what happened at dinner the other night," he said. "Patricia and I had no idea Trevor had not discussed this with you beforehand. We were led to believe this was all arranged with your blessing." "I see," I said, though I did not entirely believe him. They had seemed too comfortable with the situation. "The thing is," Gerald continued, "we sold our house based on Trevor's assurance that you were ready to move to a retirement community. But after you left, Patricia and I had a long talk. This does not sit right with us. My father was a contractor too, and I know what it means to build your own home." I was silent, waiting to see where this was going. "We would like to meet with you, Patricia and I," Gerald said. "Without Trevor and Alicia, there are some things you should know." We arranged to meet the following day at a diner, halfway between town and the city. I went alone, despite Frank's protests that it might be a trap. But when I arrived, I found only Gerald and Patricia waiting in a corner booth, looking nervous. "Thank you for coming," Gerald said, standing to shake my hand. I nodded and took a seat across from them. "What did you want to tell me?" Patricia glanced around to ensure no one was listening, then leaned forward. "Mr. Harrington, our daughter has not been honest with us, and I suspect she has not been honest with Trevor either. The story they told us was that you were eager to downsize, that the house was too much for you to maintain, and that you had practically begged them to take it over." I snorted. "Not exactly how it happened. We realize that," Gerald said grimly, "but there is more. The reason we sold our house was not just because of Trevor's invitation. The truth is, we had to sell. We are in significant debt." This surprised me. From their designer clothes and talk of cruises, I had assumed they were well off. "Appearances can be deceiving," Patricia said, as if reading my thoughts. "We have been living beyond our means for years. Gerald made some poor investment choices, and I have not sold real estate since the market crashed in 2008. We have been getting by on credit cards and home equity loans. When Alicia suggested we sell our house and move in with them, it seemed like the perfect solution," Gerald admitted. "We could pay off our debts and have a place to live rent-free. But we never intended to displace you." "Does Trevor know about your financial situation?" I asked. They exchanged glances. "We do not think so," Patricia said. "Alicia has always been protective of our image. She would not want Trevor to know." The conversation continued, with Gerald and Patricia revealing more about their circumstances and their relationship with Alicia. It became clear that their daughter had manipulated both them and Trevor, playing on her parents' financial desperation and my son's material ambitions. Before we parted, Gerald handed me a folder. "These are copies of the text messages between Alicia and us regarding the house situation. You will see that we were operating under false information. We want no part in taking your home, Mr. Harrington, and we are prepared to testify to that effect if necessary." I took the folder, nodding my thanks. "What will you do now? Where will you go?" Patricia smiled sadly. "My sister has offered us her guest house until we can get back on our feet. It is not ideal, but it is honest. Sometimes that is all you can ask for." As they walked away, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. The picture becoming clearer was not a flattering one for anyone involved, least of all my son who had been manipulated while also being willing to manipulate me. Back at Frank's house that evening, I shared what I had learned with my growing circle of supporters. Sandra was particularly interested in the text messages, which showed clear intent to deceive. "This changes things," she said. "We now have evidence that your son was operating under false pretenses, potentially influenced by his wife's misrepresentations. It strengthens your position considerably." "I am not looking to strengthen my position," I reminded her. "I just want my house back and, if possible, some kind of relationship with my son." Sandra's expression softened. "I understand that, Mr. Harrington, and the best way to achieve both might be to approach this from a position of strength, not weakness. Sometimes, people need to face consequences before they can truly change." That night, as I lay in Frank's spare bedroom staring at the ceiling, I thought about Trevor, about the little boy who used to follow me around with a toy hammer, pretending to help build things, about the teenager who once punched another kid for saying disrespectful things about me. When had he changed? Or had I been blind to who he really was all along? No, I decided. The Trevor I raised was still in there somewhere, but he needed to be reminded of who he was and where he came from. And maybe, just maybe, I was the only one who could do that. With Sandra's guidance, we developed a careful strategy. First, we gathered all documentation related to the house. The original deed, construction permits, tax records showing I had paid every cent of property tax for 30 years, utility bills in my name, and insurance policies. Sandra organized these into a comprehensive file that established beyond any doubt my legal ownership. Next, we documented the recent changes to the house without my consent. Bill and Ron helped me create a detailed inventory of furniture and belongings that had been moved, altered, or disposed of without my permission. We took photographs of the current state of rooms that had been changed, comparing them with older photos to show the extent of the alterations. The most difficult part was gathering evidence about Trevor and Alicia's intentions and actions. This included the text messages from Gerald and Patricia, notes from my conversations with them, and a written account of the confrontational dinner. Sandra advised me to write down everything I could remember about conversations where Trevor or Alicia had discussed pushing me out, including dates and specific language used. But it was Frank who made the most surprising discovery. He had a nephew who worked at the same financial firm as Trevor, in a different department. Through discreet inquiries, we learned that Trevor was in serious financial trouble. He had made several high-risk investments that had failed spectacularly, and there were rumors of gambling debts. His lifestyle with Alicia far exceeded his income, and they were underwater on multiple credit cards. This information explained the urgency behind their plan to take over my house. It was not just about having a nicer place to live. It was about solving their financial problems by acquiring a valuable mortgage-free property. It was around this time that I discovered several family heirlooms missing from the boxes in the garage. Items I had carefully preserved. My father's pocket watch, a small collection of silver dollars he had given me, and most distressingly, the remaining pieces of Margaret's jewelry that I had been saving for Trevor's future children. When I mentioned this to Sandra, her expression darkened. "We need to check local pawn shops," she said. "If they sold these items without your permission, that could constitute theft." Sure enough, after visiting 3 pawn shops in the area, we found my father's watch and the silver dollars at a place just outside the city limits. The owner remembered Trevor bringing them in about 2 months earlier, claiming they were unwanted family items he had inherited. I had to pay to reclaim my own possessions, but the pawn shop owner provided a receipt and statement confirming it was Trevor who had brought them in. The missing jewelry did not turn up, which troubled me deeply. Those pieces were Margaret's legacy, meant to be passed down to future generations. Their loss felt like losing a piece of her all over again. As the evidence mounted, Sandra suggested it was time to take legal action. She drafted a formal eviction notice for Trevor and Alicia, citing unlawful occupancy since they had effectively forced me out of my own home. She also prepared a cease and desist letter regarding the unauthorized disposal of my personal property. But I hesitated. This was my son, my only child. Despite everything, I could not bring myself to have him served with legal papers without trying to talk to him first. Frank thought I was being too soft, but Sandra understood. Family relationships are complicated, she acknowledged. If you want to try one more conversation before we proceed legally, that is your right. But I would advise having witnesses present. I decided on a middle path. I would return to the house with Sandra and ask to speak with Trevor alone. If he refused or if things turned ugly, we had the legal documents ready. But I wanted to give him one last chance to do the right thing. The day before our planned confrontation, I received an unexpected call from Trevor. "Dad?" His voice sounded strained. "Where are you staying?" "I have been trying to reach you." "I am safe," I said, not revealing my location. "What do you want, Trevor?" There was a pause. "I found some papers in your filing cabinet about the house deed and stuff. I think we need to talk." "Yes, we do," I agreed. "I will be coming by tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I would appreciate it if you would be there." "Alicia will be at work," he said quickly. "Good," I replied. "This should be between us anyway." After hanging up, I wondered what papers Trevor had found, and what had prompted his call. Had he discovered that his plan had legal obstacles? Or was there perhaps a flicker of conscience stirring? That night, I barely slept. Tomorrow would determine the future of my relationship with my son, and possibly the future of the home I had built with so much love and care. As I finally drifted off in the early hours, I dreamed of Margaret. She was standing in our kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows, smiling that smile that had always been my anchor. "Remember who he is," she seemed to say. "Remember who you raised him to be." I woke with her words echoing in my mind, feeling more centered than I had in days. Yes, I would remember the good in Trevor, the potential. But I would also stand firm in my own truth. It was time to reclaim what was mine, in more ways than one. The morning was unusually cool for that time of year. I dressed carefully in clean jeans and a button-up shirt, wanting to look respectable but not like I was trying too hard. Sandra wore her professional attire, carrying a briefcase with all our documentation. Frank insisted on driving us in his truck, saying he would wait outside in case things went south. My heart pounded as we pulled into the driveway of my home. The flower beds I had tended so carefully were overgrown now, and someone had left garbage cans at the curb for days, judging by the scattered trash around them. The house already looked neglected, and I had only been gone a week. Trevor opened the door before we could knock. His eyes widened at the sight of Sandra, then narrowed suspiciously. "Dad, I thought we were going to talk alone," he said, blocking the doorway. "This is Sandra Henderson," I said calmly. "She is here as my legal counsel. May we come in?" "Legal counsel?" Trevor's voice rose. "Are you suing me?" "That depends entirely on what happens in the next hour," Sandra interjected smoothly. "Shall we discuss this inside, or would you prefer to have this conversation on the front porch where your neighbors can hear?" Trevor reluctantly stepped aside, leading us to the living room. I noticed more changes in just the week I had been gone. More of my furniture was missing, replaced by modern pieces that looked expensive but uncomfortable. Family photos that had been on the walls for decades were gone completely. We sat on opposite sides of the room. Trevor perched nervously on the edge of a white sofa, Sandra and I in chairs facing him. For a moment, no one spoke. I took the time to really look at my son. He had dark circles under his eyes, and a nervous twitch in his left hand that I had never noticed before. He looked like a man under tremendous pressure. "Trevor," I began, "this is my home. I built it with my own hands. Every nail, every board, every shingle was placed by me for our family. I have never given anyone permission to take it from me, or to tell me I cannot live here." Trevor started to speak, but I held up a hand. "Let me finish," I said. "I know about your financial problems. I know about Alicia's parents' debt issues. I know about the missing heirlooms that were sold to pawn shops. And I know that the deed to this house is solely in my name, as it has been for 30 years. Trevor's face drained of color. "How did you?" "I have friends," I said simply. "People who care about me. People who helped me when my own son told me to go to hell. He flinched at that. Dad, I was upset. I did not mean. You meant it, I corrected him. Maybe not the exact words, but you meant for me to disappear so you could solve your problems by taking my home. What I need to understand is why. Why not just talk to me? Why the deception, the manipulation, the gradual takeover? I raised you better than that, Trevor. Sandra quietly placed a folder on the coffee table between us. This contains documentation of everything we have discussed, plus formal notices regarding the illegal disposal of Mr. Harrington's property and the unauthorized occupancy of his home. We are prepared to file these with the court today, if necessary. Trevor stared at the folder, then put his head in his hands. It all happened so fast, he mumbled. The investments failing, the credit card debt piling up. Alicia was furious with me for losing money on those tech stocks. Then her parents started talking about selling their house, and she got this idea. Go on, I encouraged when he trailed off. He looked up, his eyes red. She said you were getting old, that you would be better off in a community with people your age, that we would be doing you a favor by taking over the house. And I wanted to believe her, because it solved all our problems at once. Her parents would have somewhere to live. We would have a house with no mortgage, and you, he faltered. And I would be out of the way. I finished for him. He nodded miserably. It sounds terrible when you say it like that. How else would you say it? I asked. Trevor had no answer. He stared at the floor, shoulders slumped. The gambling debts, I said. How bad are they? His head snapped up. How did you know about that? Like I said, I have friends, people who care enough to tell me the truth, even when it is painful. Trevor sighed deeply. About $40,000. I got in over my head, trying to make back what I lost on those investments. Alicia does not know about that part. She thinks it was just bad stock picks. Sandra leaned forward. Mr. Harrington, your father has several options here. He could have you evicted immediately. He could press charges for the theft and sale of his personal property. He could sue for damages to his home and belongings. Any judge would rule in his favor, given the evidence we have collected. Trevor paled further. Dad, please? I do not know what to say, except I am sorry. I was desperate and not thinking straight. I studied my son, trying to see past the man to the boy I had raised. Was he truly remorseful, or just sorry he got caught? Was there anything of Margaret in him still? Any trace of the values we had tried to instill? Before I could respond, the front door opened, and Alicia walked in, followed by her parents. She froze when she saw us, her expression shifting rapidly from surprise to anger. What is going on here? She demanded. Trevor, why is he back? And who is this? This is my attorney, I said, standing to face her. And this is still my house, which means I have every right to be here. Gerald stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. Actually, Alicia, we need to talk about that. Your mother and I have been thinking, and we cannot go through with this plan. It is not right to force Mr. Harrington from his own home. Alicia whirled on her father. What are you talking about? We had an agreement. Patricia shook her head. An agreement based on lies, dear. You told us Mr. Harrington wanted to move. You said he was eager to downsize. That was not true, was it? The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Alicia. She looked from her parents to Trevor to me, her composure cracking. This is ridiculous, she finally sputtered. This house is half Trevor's anyway. His mother helped build it. Actually, Sandra interjected, checking her notes. According to the deed and all construction records, this house belongs solely to Mr. Diamond Harrington. Mrs. Harrington passed away before construction was completed, and all permits and materials were paid for by Mr. Harrington alone. Is that true? Trevor asked me, looking shocked. I nodded. Your mother helped design it, but she died before we finished building. I completed it myself, every last detail, just the way she wanted it. That is why it meant so much to have you move back in. I thought you understood what this house represents. Trevor looked stricken. I did not know, Dad. I always assumed. You assumed what was convenient, Gerald said sharply, surprising everyone. Just like your assumption that your mother and I would happily go along with displacing an elderly man from his own home. We raised you better than that, Alicia. Alicia's facade finally crumbled. She sank into a chair, tears streaming down her face. Everything is falling apart, she sobbed. The credit cards are maxed out. Trevor's investments failed, and now you two are backing out. What are we supposed to do? Patricia moved to sit beside her daughter, placing a hand on her shoulder. We face our problems honestly, together, as a family, not by taking advantage of others. I looked around the room at these broken people, each caught in their own web of deception and fear. My anger was still there, but something else was growing alongside it. Understanding, perhaps, or maybe just clarity. Here is what is going to happen, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. This is my house. I built it, I paid for it, and I will continue to live in it. Trevor and Alicia, you have two choices. You can move out voluntarily within 30 days, or you can be evicted by court order immediately. Those are your only options regarding the house. Trevor nodded, accepting my terms without protest. But Alicia started to object until her father silenced her with a look. Additionally, I continued, all items removed from the house without my permission must be returned or paid for. I have already recovered some family heirlooms from pawn shops, but Margaret's jewelry is still missing. I want it back. It is gone, Alicia admitted quietly. We sold it to a jewelry dealer in the city. They have probably melted it down by now. The pain of that loss hit me hard, but I pressed on. Then you will compensate me for its value. Sandra has the documentation. Trevor looked at me, his expression a mixture of shame and relief. What about us, Dad? I mean, our relationship? That is up to you, I said honestly. I will always be your father. I will always love you. But trust has been broken here, and it will take time and effort to rebuild it, if that is even possible. I want to try, he said, tears forming in his eyes. I know I do not deserve it, but I want to try to make things right. Gerald cleared his throat. Patricia and I have decided to accept my sister's offer of her guest house until we can get back on our feet. We want no part in this situation anymore. For the next hour, we hammered out the details of a formal agreement. Trevor and Alicia would move out within 30 days. They would restore or pay for any damaged or missing items. They would seek financial counseling for their debt issues and, at my insistence, Trevor would get help for his gambling problem. In return, I would not press charges for the theft of family heirlooms, and I would consider, after a period of demonstrated change, helping them with a down payment on their own home. By the time Sandra, Frank, and I left, the first steps toward resolution had been taken. The house would be mine again. The legal matters would be settled, but the emotional wounds would take much longer to heal, if they ever did completely. As we drove away, Frank glanced at me. You okay, Diamond? I watched my house recede in the side mirror. Not yet, I said truthfully, but I will be. True to their word, Trevor and Alicia moved out exactly 30 days later. They found a small apartment closer to Trevor's work and began the long process of untangling their financial mess. Gerald and Patricia moved to Gerald's sister's guest house in Arizona, putting distance between themselves and the situation. I moved back into my home with mixed emotions. The place had been altered so much that at first, it did not feel like mine anymore. The warm, comfortable spaces Margaret and I had designed had been replaced by cold, modern aesthetics that held no memories or meaning for me. So I began the process of reclaiming my space, one room at a time. Frank and the guys from the construction company came over on weekends to help. We repainted walls, refinished floors, and rebuilt cabinets. Bill managed to find an old recliner similar to the one Margaret had given me, which had disappeared during Trevor and Alicia's occupation. Slowly, the house began to feel like home again. Not exactly as it had been, for some changes could not be undone, but comfortable, and mine nonetheless. I planted new flowers in the garden, replaced the shed that had been converted to a storage space, and hung family photos back on the walls. 3 months after moving back in, Trevor called and asked if he could visit. Alone, without Alicia. I agreed, curious about what he wanted. He arrived looking different, more like the son I remembered. Gone was the designer clothing and slick-back hair. He wore jeans and a simple button-up shirt, his hair natural, his expression humble. We sat on the porch, 2 rocking chairs facing the sunset, much as Margaret and I used to do. For a while, neither of us spoke, just rocking gently and watching the colors change in the sky. "The house looks good, Dad," he finally said. "More like it used to." "Getting there," I replied. "Still work to do." Trevor nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet bag. "I found this at a pawn shop across town," he said, handing it to me. The guy remembered Alicia, bringing it in. I had to pay triple what she got for it, but I opened the bag and tipped the contents into my palm. Margaret's wedding ring, the one I had given Trevor to present to his future wife, the one that had been in her family for generations. "I thought this was lost forever," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I have been checking pawn shops all over the city," Trevor admitted. "Figured if I could find anything that belonged to Mom, it would be a start at making things right." I closed my fingers around the ring, feeling its familiar contours. "Thank you," I said simply. Trevor shifted in his chair. "I have been seeing a therapist about the gambling," he said. "And Alicia and I are in couples counseling. Turns out we both have issues with honesty and materialism. I never told her about the gambling, and she never told me about her parents' financial troubles. We were just pretending everything was fine while it all fell apart." "That sounds like progress," I offered. He nodded. "Slow progress, but real. I am working extra hours to pay down the debt. Alicia got a second job too. We sold most of the fancy furniture and stuff. None of it really mattered anyway." We talked for another hour as the sun disappeared and stars began to appear. Trevor told me about his therapy, about the realizations he was having regarding his values and choices. He asked thoughtful questions about my life with Margaret, about the house, about things he had never bothered to ask before. Before he left, he paused at the steps. "I do not expect you to forgive me right away, Dad. What I did was unforgivable, but I want you to know I am trying to be someone you can be proud of again. Someone Mom would be proud of. I am listening," I told him, "and watching. Actions speak louder than words." He nodded, understanding the implicit challenge. "See you next Sunday for dinner?" "I will be here," I confirmed. Over the following months, a new pattern emerged. Trevor would visit every Sunday, sometimes with Alicia, sometimes alone. Each time, he would bring something small he had found from the things they had taken. A photo album, a set of Margaret's favorite recipes, my father's fishing lures. Piece by piece, he was returning not just objects but memories and connections. Alicia was slower to change, more resistant to admitting her role in what had happened. But even she gradually showed signs of growth. She apologized, haltingly and awkwardly, but sincerely. She asked questions about Margaret, about the history of the house, seeming to finally understand its significance beyond its market value. 6 months after the confrontation, Trevor asked if he could help me rebuild the garden shed. I agreed, curious to see if my office worker's son had any of my building skills in his blood. To my surprise, he showed up in work clothes, with a basic tool belt and a determined expression. We spent the weekend measuring, cutting, and constructing. Trevor was clumsy at first, unused to physical labor, but he learned quickly and worked without complaint despite blisters and sore muscles. As we set the last roof panel in place late Sunday afternoon, Trevor wiped sweat from his brow and looked at our creation with pride. "We built that, Dad," he said, wonder in his voice. "With our own hands." "Yes, we did," I agreed, feeling a connection to my son I had not felt in years. "This is how I built the house, you know. One board at a time, one nail at a time, one day at a time." Trevor nodded, understanding washing over his face. "And that is how we rebuild trust too, is not it? One action at a time, one day at a time. Exactly, I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. Exactly. A year after the confrontation, life had found a new normal. Trevor and Alicia had made significant progress on their debt, thanks to stricter budgeting and Trevor's promotion at work. They had moved to a slightly larger apartment, but were living within their means for the first time in their marriage. I had fully reclaimed my home, making some updates of my own choosing, while preserving the elements that mattered most to me. Frank and Linda were regular visitors, as were other friends who had stood by me during the crisis. On the anniversary of my return to the house, I hosted a small gathering. Frank and Linda, Bill and his wife, Ron and his family, Sandra and her husband, and yes, Trevor and Alicia. We grilled in the backyard, played horseshoes, and shared stories well into the evening. As twilight fell, Trevor asked if he could say something. Everyone quieted as he stood, looking nervous but determined. "A year ago, I made the worst mistake of my life," he began. "I betrayed my father, my heritage, and everything I had been taught about respect and family. I tried to take something that was not mine, something irreplaceable that had been created with love and sacrifice." He paused, looking around at the gathering. "But my dad taught me something through all this. He taught me that while betrayal destroys trust, honesty and consistent action can rebuild it. Not overnight, not completely, but enough to go forward. He showed me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stand firm in your truth, even when it hurts. And he demonstrated that forgiveness is possible without forgetting, that boundaries can coexist with love." Trevor turned to face me directly. "Dad, I want to thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave up on you, for showing me what real strength looks like, for teaching me again what it means to be a man of integrity." The gathering applauded, and I felt tears threatening. I stood and embraced my son, whispering in his ear, "Your mother would be proud of the man you are becoming." Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone on the porch in the darkness. The house behind me was quiet, solid, a testament to endurance and care. I thought about Margaret, about the life we had planned here, about the twists and turns that had brought me to this moment. The greatest lesson I learned through all of this was not about property rights or legal strategies. It was about the balance between love and self-respect. For too long, I had thought that loving my son meant accepting whatever treatment he offered, that my role as father was to give endlessly without expectation. But true love, the kind that helps someone grow, includes boundaries and consequences. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stand firm and say, "No, this is not acceptable. I deserve better. We both deserve better." I had also learned about community, about the surprising strength that comes from allowing others to help. My stubborn independence had nearly cost me everything. It was only by reaching out, by admitting vulnerability, that I found the support needed to reclaim what was mine. As I rocked gently in the darkness, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for a long time. The house was mine. My relationship with my son was healing, and I had discovered reserves of strength I never knew I possessed. The journey was not over. Trust, once broken, is never quite the same. But we were moving forward, one day at a time, one conversation at a time, one shared moment at a time. And in the end, that is all any of us can really ask for. The chance to rebuild, to grow, to find our way back to what matters most. If you have ever faced betrayal from someone you love, I would like to hear your story in the comments below. How did you handle it? Were you able to rebuild trust, or did you have to walk away? Also, if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. Thank you for listening to An Old Man's Tale. And remember, sometimes the hardest lessons teach us the most valuable truths.